7:38 at KPEL. Welcome back to Acadiana's Morning News. If you've been following what we have on our website, the Facebook pages, and even this morning talking to Don Briggs from the Louisiana Oil and Gas Association, you know the reality of the lawsuit filed against about 45 different oil companies, some of which not even doing business in the state right now, and filed in Vermilion Parish. Keith Stutes, the district attorney there. Joining us on the phone, though, from the other side, Richard Broussard from Broussard David, the law firm that is handling this lawsuit. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. How are you, Rob?
Doing great. So I kind of like to start at square one to sort of get the origins of this, where this started. Was there any comment from the public in Vermilion Parish or any request about this, and just kind of lay the groundwork for how this lawsuit came about?
Sure. Back in the 70s, people throughout Louisiana saw what was happening to our environment. People who fished and people who hunted and people who rode boats and hiked through our coastal environment saw what was going on. And the complex and scattered laws that existed for decades before that were consolidated into something called the Coastal Zone Management Act. In 1978, that law became very straightforward and simple. It told oil companies who operated in Louisiana what was the proper process. They were required to take a permit out and agree to follow the process. And many of those oil companies did so. Some of them didn't, and continue today to not do so. And people saw what was going on and asked, why are some companies complying with these rules and other companies are not? And as the Attorney General pointed out several months ago, in certain parishes, including Vermilion, the district attorney had the obligation under law to see that the laws were enforced uniformly. And the Attorney General asked the district attorney to find yourself a lawyer to bring this litigation, and he did so. And the investigation showed that what had been discovered in other parishes to our west and to our east also was occurring in Louisiana. Some companies were complying and some were not. And some damages were occurring. And it turned out that damage was substantial. And so the regulatory violations were categorized and the damage was noted, and the claims have been brought through the proper proceeding, which is through a court proceeding that was established back in the 70s, almost 4 decades ago.
So why, if it was being violated back in the 70s, was this lawsuit not brought back then?
You'd have to ask the people that were around then. I really don't know.
All right.
That's the same question that would be asked in 40 years from now if we weren't doing this now.
Okay. So Attorney General Jeff Landry yesterday issued a statement in part which reads, "We intend to intervene in this lawsuit and any subsequent ones to protect the interests of our state and the people in the most judicious and economical manner." Was the proper permit office contacted to see what permits were issued, which were in violation, and is there a list out for the public to view of those?
There is no single list. That's a difficult part. That may be one of the reasons that this hasn't happened before. It takes a lot of work to put this information together. As you said, the Attorney General will intervene in this action. Parishes in both to our east and to our west have filed these complaints appropriately, I'm certain. And the Attorney General has come in and said, yes, the state is interested in this also, and he's intervened there. And he explained that he would do that when he asked the district attorney to get a lawyer to handle this matter.
And are we talking about the state attorney general before Jeff Landry?
Can you say that, please?
Are we talking about the attorney before Jeff Landry?
No, we're speaking about Jeff Landry this year.
Okay. One more question, just regarding the specifics in the Vermilion Parish situation. We had heard kind of differing reports yesterday. The police jury was against a lawsuit, and then we heard from others who said they were sort of half and half. But there was never, it seems, a vote by the police jury, which seems to be the body that would bring such a lawsuit. What has been the dealings with them and their constituents that they represent?
Okay, I believe that the vast majority, you wouldn't believe the phone calls that I've received since this news story broke, telling us, this is the right thing to do. And I knew it was before I got involved in it. What happened with the police jury is in 1978, when this law became consolidated, called the Coastal Zone Resource Management Act, when it became consolidated, parishes were given the option to develop their own coastal zone management plan. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And in those parishes, the district attorney does not have the right or obligation to bring the action unless the police jury requests that they do so. In Vermilion Parish, there's no coastal zone management plan for the parish, and the district attorney is the one, as Attorney General Jeff Landrys pointed out, is the one that is mandated under law to enforce these laws uniformly.
We had gotten some of that information from Don Briggs a little bit earlier today, talking to the Louisiana Oil and Gas Association, obviously very clearly for our listeners on the opposite side of this issue. How do you differentiate, as an attorney, those who want a piece of the big pile of money that is led to believe is there, that the oil companies want to settle on this? They say they don't. That people really have concerns for the environment, or they just want a settlement?
Well, I think that the people, both of those in the oil industry and those who are not in the oil industry, who have a concern for the environment, are more interested in having the environment protected than they are in seeing that the oil companies who don't practice under the law take these profits that they make home. But let me point out what I suspect Mr. Briggs hasn't mentioned, is that some of these companies complied with the law, created valuable jobs for the citizens of South Louisiana by doing the cleanup correctly when they were mandated to do so, and others, when they reached that fork in the road, they put the profits in their pockets and took them elsewhere. The work that we're mandating now will create jobs that should have existed when the original work was done. So I would think that most people, and certainly everyone who called me yesterday, is in favor of seeing that this happens. Imagine how you would feel if your competing radio station was allowed to violate the rules and then take back to Texas or wherever they're from the profits that they make, and your radio station complied with the rules, did all of its business correctly according to law.
Yeah. You
would think, isn't that unfair? Well, of course it is, and that's why the district attorney is bringing this action.
Well, we keep going back to the companies that did do what they were supposed to, according to your findings, and those who didn't. I know you said there's a huge list. I would imagine there is going to be a large staff that's going to work on this. This is a big case. Do you ever anticipate that list ever being released to the public? Because I think it might change what a lot of people feel about this whole proceeding.
Well, that's a good thought, and that never occurred to me. In other words, if a police officer stops somebody speeding on the side of the road, he's focused on enforcing the rule that was broken, not in pointing out all the motorists that are going by at the speed limit. And it never occurred to me to point out the fact that most companies do participate properly.
And one thing that was mentioned earlier this morning with Mr. Briggs is he suggested they don't know what violations they are alleged to have committed.
Well, I'm certainly glad to hear that question. There's really no reason. It's totally unnecessary for Mr. Briggs to remain unaware of the violations or the damage. If he wants to come meet with us, we'll be happy to show him, and then he won't have to say any more that he doesn't know about this.
Now, in terms of how you like the proof of that, who does the burden of proof fall on? Does it fall on? I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, pardon me, Bernadette. complete your question.
Oh, no, I was just asking, like, how does that, in this type of proceeding, who has the burden of proving their side?
The person that brings the lawsuit does,
Okay.
of course. And before we instituted this action, we knew that there's a process in law, and you no doubt aware of it, called a motion for summary judgment, where frivolous lawsuits can be immediately dismissed. Before we filed this complaint, we knew that if we filed a frivolous lawsuit, it'd be promptly dismissed.
Sure.
We found the violations. We put together the documents that are necessary, and so if the oil company thinks it's frivolous, they have a simple process to get the suit dismissed. Instead, in the other parishes where the litigation started much earlier, they've done every delay tactics to bring about a postponement of resolution. And we hope that they don't do it here. We hope they move straight to the facts and we can get on and have a decision made.
So what's the ultimate, I don't want to use the word payoff, what's the ultimate solution that you have for this lawsuit? Is it the oil companies settling? Is it them starting to follow? I mean, what is the end of the road for you in this lawsuit?
The end of the road is restoration of the damage that's done, so that the next time we have a hurricane such as Hurricane Rita, that if you were in Vermilion Parish after that storm, you saw the destruction of the environment and the depression of the population that had to deal with this. So the next time that sort of thing happens, we have begun to restore our coastal environment so that we have the natural barriers to protect the coastal zone from storm surges. That's ultimately when I grew up. I grew up down in the coastal zone. Vermilion Parish was just a huge, beautiful coastal plain. And now you go along the road to Conn Island and you see just huge areas that were land, and now they're just empty, salty water. And the storm surges roll right past that. There are processes that can protect us from that happening in the future, and that's the goal, is to see that happens.
Could the argument be made, though, that a lot of the damage is caused by natural process, by actual nature?
It's definitely a combination of the two.
So how do you separate and say, okay, this part was a hurricane, or this part was this, or this part was the, oil and gas industry? Like, when the average person looks at that, how do they differentiate? How would they know?
Well,
I know that's kind of complex, but
it is complex, but the logic is there, and it appeals to people because it makes sense. If you see a site where it was a coastal plain before, and an oil well was placed in there, and you go in and view it, and you see a canal running from that site to the Gulf of Mexico,
mm-hmm.
and that canal is salty, and it's salty around this drilling site or along this pipeline, but it's not salty a half mile away. And all the vegetation has died right along that pipeline or at that drilling site. There's a pretty logical conclusion, and you verify that by testing the soil and determining why vegetation doesn't grow there anymore.
All right.
So I'm sure competing experts for sure, huh?
Absolutely. Richard Broussard from Broussard David. We will continue to keep up with you. When we have this, obviously a lot in our area don't want any more bad news for what is their livelihood in this oil and gas economy that we live in down here. I can imagine you were prepared for that when you took on this case, but we will keep in touch with you as it moves forward, and obviously more comes out. But I would give thought to a list where we can see
mm-hmm.
what companies did what, because at this point it's just out there, and from the other side, from the Louisiana Oil and Gas Association, they think that the policies that were in place at the time is what they were following. So we shall see as it moves forward. We appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
All right,
both of you.
7:52. This is Acadiana's Morning News. We will put both interviews up. This current interview up, and then earlier we talked to Don Briggs from the Louisiana Oil and Gas Association as well.
This is not going to be the only time, as Rob was pointing out, that we're going to hear about this, because this is an amazing topic. It's a huge topic. and especially when it comes to, the environmental side of it, because many people have had questions over the years. And we know that the things are disappearing at an awfully fast rate.
You just have to kind of sit back and think. I mean, that's my biggest question is why now? I mean, he did say he has the same question too, that it should have happened back in the 70s. Maybe we would have been in a different situation, but that's not going to change the opinion of many people, that and even the Attorney General, which calls this a frivolous lawsuit. We will continue to take your calls, your conversation coming up, the rest of Acadiana's Morning News. It's coming up all after your Fox Business Update and news.